This is the protest this morning, the 18th of March 2025, outside of the Parliament House. It's put on by the Palestine Action Group to protest the anti-protest laws. They're over the road. There's there's only not even 20 over the road in Martin Place gathered, but they were supposed to be here. I'm not sure who these people are. Bringing back public psychiatrists. So the psychiatrists are here as well. There's some school kids getting a tour of the Parliament House, and there's quite a few cops around. There's either, I don't know, a cop or a security or something. But yeah, I would assume they said it's outside the Parliament, but it's across the road. So yeah, let's go and see what's going on. Because it's always such a narrow area to protest here. If you've got in big numbers, you just can't do it. So maybe they told them to go over the road, but it doesn't look like there's many there, and it's due to kick off right now. So anyway, we're outside New South Wales Parliament House. We'll see what's happening. I'd say there's more cops than protesters at the moment. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 behind me. A couple more here. So probably, yeah, maybe 20 of each. Maybe a little bit more now. It's growing slightly. It's not many. There's not that many. It's quite a small group. But maybe it'll swell a bit. A bit of drumming is going to be happening as well. Yeah. So let's see what happens. There's not any mainstream media. There's this. Was he this guy? Yeah, he's the Sky guy. So it's this guy. Just the Sky News guy. He's on his own these days. He doesn't even get a camera crew anymore. Yeah, so we'll just wait and see if there's going to be any speeches. I don't even seem to have a megaphone. Alright, well it looks like the cops are kind of gathering them there together. You've got Josh from the PAG, again this is the Sky News dude. There is, what's her name, Jenny Leong from the Greens, Newtown Greens rep. And there's just a small, yeah, it's quite a small group, but they are on the way over there now. Let's see, yeah, maybe 30. So they're gonna obviously gonna have some speeches outside the Parliament. We'll see how it goes. And it's just pretty much me and Sky here. I was just saying to someone else, it's Sky News is on hard times now. I used to have a like a camera crew and a sound recordist and a producer and everyone else. Now I've seen him a few times lately, and he's just on his own. So it's all quite organised with the cops. I should go to the front now, stuck at the back. Anyway, I'll get down the front. We'll see how it's going. Yeah, the psychiatrists again, they're not part of it.
There is a point.
The sign said mental health is a health issue. But she's the candidate going up against Albo in Albo's electorate for the Greens, I believe, as well. Should learn who people are a bit better, but they never know. And this guy's got an attitude. I'm not sure, with his pram, tried to run me over before and getting the stare down. Alright, cops are coming in to make sure we're all gathered correctly. Okay, I'll stop talking and we'll wait till they start talking.
Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! I've got a new one we can try out. It goes, repeal, resign, free, free Palestine. This is obviously our message to Chris Minns and to the New South Wales government and the Australian government for that matter. Repeal, resign, free, free Palestine. Repeal, resign.
Free, free Palestine.
Repeal, resign.
Free, free Palestine.
Repeal, resign.
Free, free Palestine.
All right, thanks everyone for coming out this morning at very short notice. My name's Josh Lees, I'm from the Palestine Action Group Sydney. We've called this rally this morning obviously to try to keep up and pile on the pressure on this rotten Minns government, which we know has passed recently a bunch of terrible, undemocratic, and we say unconstitutional anti-protest laws based on lies. And we are here to demand that those laws be repealed, to demand, which I understand probably will be happening, a full inquiry into how the hell this came about, when the government knew what they knew, which, I mean, blind Freddy can figure that out, in my opinion, but be good to force them to answer questions about that, and of course to demand, that those laws be repealed as well. I want to acknowledge, of course, that we're meeting on and protesting here on stolen Gadigal land, that land was never ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to the Greens for being here too. And I'm going to invite Jenny up to speak straight away because I understand they have to get to a meeting soon. So this is Jenny Leong, long-time supporter of this cause and many others. Thank you so much, Jenny from the Greens.
And thanks to the amazing ongoing efforts of the Palestinian Action Group and the so many other activists that are standing in solidarity with Palestine and against the outrageous attempt to curb people's civil rights and human rights. The Greens stand in solidarity with the right to peaceful protest. In fact, even as we chose to exercise our democratic right by coming and standing in front of this Parliament and expressing our democratic views, the New South Wales Police said that if we dared to block the footpath, that we would be issued with a move-on order. If you have a look around, it appears to be there are almost as many New South Wales police here, not to mention the riot squads around the corner, as there are people standing up for their right to protest. The New South Wales police are being used as a protection racket to provide political cover for an outrageous and disgraceful Minns government that has failed to listen to the needs of the people and has in fact used the horrific events that occurred on October the 7th as a way to be able to try and advance his own political agenda and maintain his own power. In that process, he has lied to this Parliament. He has been on the ABC whipping up the risk of there being some hundreds of anti-Semitic attacks when we know that he is engaging in political spin, and that actually those attacks related to possible incidents and reports of Islamophobia, of anti-Semitism, of racism, of discrimination. Well, I've got news for Premier Minns. Racism and discrimination are not new in this state. And the police in New South Wales and the Crimes Act and strengthening law and order reforms have never been the solution to stopping racism and discrimination. And we know that what we do when we crack down on the right to peaceful protest is that we stop the health of our democracy. And I'm very proud to be here with the Greens today and be standing with my Greens colleague, Kobi Shetty, the member for Balmain, who will very shortly go into that chamber and provide a notice of motion to introduce a bill to repeal the anti-protest laws that we saw passed in the last sitting. And we know that in that chamber we have very few friends. But we don't go into that chamber to make friends with the likes of the people who are cutting down our democracy. We don't go in there for the purpose of making friends with people who seek to further divide our communities. We go in there to take the voices of the people from the streets into the parliament to make it clear that we will not stand for their anti-Palestinian, for their anti-protest and their anti-human rights approach to democracy in this state. Because the only people that win when that happens are the right-wing fascists, the bigots, and the people that want to see our democracy fail. We are the bastions of democracy. We are committed to the right to peaceful protest and free speech. Long live Palestine, free Palestine, from the river to the sea. And may we always gather on this footpath, take up the space and protest outside of this building, because that is what a healthy democracy looks like. I'm Jenny Leong from the Greens. Thanks all for coming out today.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
All right, thanks once again to Jenny Leong and the rest of the Greens crew in there. We wish them all the best in that den of infamy that is the New South Wales Parliament. It's worth going back to the beginning to recap, why we're here and what we're doing. So we know, as Jenny referred to, there has been what the police have called a criminal con job carried out, particularly in Sydney. The most high-profile aspect of that, of course, was the Dural caravan and a spate of other attacks, attacks on Jewish people. But the New South Wales and the federal police have already said that they strongly suspected from the very beginning that this was not, in fact, acts that were motivated by anti-Semitism. They certainly were not acts that had any link to the protest movement for Palestine in this country. They should not be deemed terrorism. That's what they said in the very first press conference they gave about the Dural caravan. The police came out and said that they strongly suspected this could be a setup from day one. We now have seen the Australian Federal Police said that they knew, in their words, almost immediately that this was in fact part of a criminal hoax and not motivated by anti-Semitism, and again, definitely not linked to any protest movement. And yet we had, from that day onwards, Chris Minns, the police minister here, Yasmine Catley, Anthony Albanese, Peter Dutton, all of them come out and say that what we were experiencing in Australia and in Sydney was what they called a tide, a wave of anti-Semitic terror, and that the supposed answer to that was to crack down on protests. So this is an entire story that is a fiction based on a web of lies. And in fact, we have to say that in terms of a criminal con job, it's not the low-down, crooks that have carried out the biggest con job. It is in fact the politicians in that place that have carried out the biggest con job of all. They have perpetuated the great hoax on all of us. They have perpetuated this con job. They are the ones who have come out and lied again and again and used this terrible act that in fact themselves contributed to significantly and whipped up in an utterly cynical way, whipped up fear and division in our society, whipped up fear in the Jewish community, helped to whip up racism against Muslims and the Palestinian community and the Arab community here in Sydney because of these lies about terrorism and anti-Semitism, and tried to slander and demonize and repress a movement for a free Palestine, which from day one has made absolutely clear, crystal clear, its opposition to anti-Semitism and all forms of racism, a movement that is fighting for an end to a genocide, a movement that's fighting for peace and equality. Instead, the government has used this criminal con job to engage in their own criminal con job and pass a series of draconian, vicious, horrible anti-protest laws that are fundamentally undemocratic. Now, yesterday, the Palestine Action Group Sydney here, we announced that we will be launching a constitutional challenge to these undemocratic laws. So that is one avenue by which we wish to strike down a bunch of these laws. Obviously, though, what we need is a political solution to what's going on. In other words, we need the government to back down. We need people in the government, and we know there are Labor MPs who have said that they're against these laws. Lots of them, in fact, they've spoken out, said these are the most draconian laws, I forget the exact quote, in history or in decades, that have been passed. We know there are people in the Labor caucus who are against them, and yet they voted for the laws. We call on those people to get a spine, to show some bloody principle. They make speeches, in fact, some of these Labor MPs, about the dangers of creeping fascism, and that is a real danger. When we look at Donald Trump, we look at what's happening in the United States, we see the vicious, authoritarian, repressive laws and acts that they are carrying out, where people are being deported, rounded up, kidnapped, deported, just for their political views in America right now. That has begun. And here we have a Labor government engaging in this kind of Trumpian style authoritarian repression of political activists. And we have people in the so-called Labor left who voted for these laws, who talk about the danger of creeping fascism. Well, they need to vote against creeping fascism then. How can you say these are the most draconian laws and then vote for them? How can you say it's creeping fascism and then vote for it? So we call on those people to stand with the community here, with society, and with the dozens of civil society and different community and activist organisations that have expressed their opposition to these laws. Put your money where your mouth is. Vote with the Greens and Independents to strike down these laws and to repeal them now. Protesting is not a crime! Free, free Palestine!
Free Palestine!
Protesting is not a crime!
Protesting is not a crime!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Protesting is not a crime!
Protesting is not a crime!
Free, free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Now, to be clear, the government passed a raft of anti-protest laws in the last weeks, all based on the same lies. We oppose all of them. Our constitutional challenge is targeting the law that gives the police the powers, new powers, to move on any protests that happen in or near places of worship. Now, we've got to be clear about this. I mean, firstly, from the point of view of the Palestine Action Group, we haven't actually organised any protests targeting places of worship ever. But we understand there are other community groups who have very legitimate reasons to protest sometimes against religious institutions. We know the entire history, for example, of church abuse survivors needing to protest against the rotten cover-ups and practices engaged in by the hierarchies of the Catholic and other churches. We know recently there have been protests by pro-Palestine Jewish organisations criticising the fact that sometimes they have turned synagogues into political spaces to support the genocide in Gaza. They have invited war criminals and Israeli soldiers and generals to speak at those places of worship. So there are legitimate reasons to protest at places of worship. They should not be excluded from criticism in our society. But these laws go even further than that. These laws don't just mean that the police can ban your protest if you are targeting a place of worship, if you are protesting against a place of worship. These laws just say if you are near a place of worship and you are deemed to be even just obstructing people or impeding people, that is enough for the police then to have the power to move on your protest. In other words, to ban and potentially physically attack and arrest protesters. So this is a huge attack on the right to protest in New South Wales. And we just have to think, where are all of the most common protest locations in our city? And there aren't very many spaces we can actually gather to protest in this city. There is not much public space, which is a problem in and of itself. But think about Hyde Park. Think about Town Hall Square. Think about outside the Supreme Court. Think about where we are right now all are near places of worship. All. Therefore, would have, under these new laws, the police would have the powers to ban and move on protesters from any of those locations. So this is totally shameful, totally unjustified. There's not a single, they don't even try to justify or make any link between why these laws are supposedly necessary. There has not been actually any cases of people going to places of worship being harassed or intimidated or whatever, anything like that. The government is just talking absolute garbage in order to justify attacks on protest. And we know where this is really coming from, of course. Chris Minns has made absolutely no secret of the fact from day one he has backed Israel's genocide in Gaza. That's what Chris Minns and this government have done. That's, of course, what Peter Dutton has done. That's what Anthony Albanese have done, to their shame. And from day one, Chris Minns has been slandering and trying to ban and repress the mass protest movement that has erupted in opposition to Israel's genocide in Gaza. So that's what these laws are. It's obvious. This is Chris Minns seizing on a criminal hoax to engage in his own political con job to pass anti-protest laws to try to repress and ban and silence opposition to his government and silence opposition to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And that's why it's so important that we stand up against these laws. Now, I think it is clear that Chris Minns mainly has in mind banning Palestine protests when he passed these laws, but of course they don't just apply to Palestine protesters, they apply to anyone who wants to protest for any cause. They have, again, kind of cynically tried to, insert a carve-out for industrial action because they don't want to take on the unions as well as everyone else at once. But that is fig leaf anyway. There are many times when unions, workers want to protest for their rights or for other progressive causes, and they will also be caught up in these anti-protest laws. So these laws are an attack on the union movement as well. They're an attack on workers' rights, and they're an attack on every progressive movement. And that's why we saw yesterday a dozen different organisations stand up together to oppose these laws, from climate activist groups to civil liberties groups in society, to obviously the Palestine movement, to movements for LGBTQI rights in this state, and many others. Sorry if I'm forgetting who else was there yesterday. There was a big crowd. But this is really essential. We need to build a big coalition to oppose these anti-protest laws. They affect everyone. They were passed based on lies, and we need to repudiate them and repeal them now. All right, I'm going to invite up, we have a couple of speakers lined up for today. So I'll get Yaz to come and speak first. Yasmine Johnson is one of the leaders of the Students for Palestine movement. She herself is a Jewish student who herself actually has faced another aspect of this kind of repressive authoritarian climate being wheeled out against Palestine activists, particularly on our university campuses as well. And that's the other shameful thing about these laws, is that they and about the whole actual hoax that the government has engaged in and the lies they've carried out, is it hasn't just fed new anti-protest laws, it's fed a wave of witch hunt, repression, McCarthyism throughout our institutions in our society, which has seen people sacked, their lives ruined, people threatened in all sorts of ways. So I'll pass over to Yaz. Thank you.
Well, I think what's happened here has been made pretty obvious by the fact that Chris Minns now, even though it has been revealed that the whole basis for these laws was a hoax, has refused to back down and said he will follow through with anti-protest laws in New South Wales. So then New South Wales and the federal government, as well as, like Josh mentioned, other institutions in our society, like the universities, have done two things. One, they have equated all pro-Palestine activism that has happened over the past couple of years, actually over decades, with anti-Semitism, when we are the ones standing up for justice and against racism. And now too, in the last 2 years, the New South Wales and federal governments have created such a heightened atmosphere around the question of anti-Semitism that they have carried on a lie around dozens of incidents in Sydney. These are incidents which even the New South Wales police, not by any means our friends in campaigning for Palestine, have admitted had no anti-Semitic motive, but organised crime knew that there was such a heightened atmosphere that they could use this environment for their own purposes. That is the kind of environment that the New South Wales government has whipped up. protesters are the problem, have used the climate that they have created to try and justify these new laws, to speak out, to limit our ability to speak out about what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank. It's exactly the same narrative that students have seen used on campuses across the country. At Sydney University, the new campus access policy means that students are not able to freely put up posters, hold banners, organise rallies on campus without notifying security in advance, or those things could be grounds for disciplinary action. We've seen what kind of direction this leads in. Donald Trump has taken it to an extreme in the United States by arresting, abducting, and threatening to deport students like Mahmoud Khalil. You know who else they're arresting at the moment in the United States? Jewish protesters who are standing up for the right of students to speak out in support of Palestine. I think that shows you just how cynical their lies about defending Jewish people here and in America are. You're only worthy of defense insofar as you support a state that is genocidal, that is carrying out apartheid and ethnic cleansing. That is who is worth defending for the New South Wales government and for Trump over in the US. At Sydney University, students have been threatened with disciplinary action or had it carried out because they organised protest. For me, it was the crime of holding a megaphone on Sydney University campus. That was at a protest that was authorised by the New South Wales Police, and yet it was grounds for Sydney University to carry out disciplinary action against me. Another student at the moment is facing disciplinary action for writing in whiteboard marker on a board slogans about Palestine and the university cutting ties with Thales, a weapons company that supplies to Israel. This student is transgender, she's seeking asylum in Australia, and Sydney University went ahead and initiated disciplinary proceedings against her, threatening her status in Australia on a student visa. I think if the government and our universities spent half as much time about thinking about what they could do to end genocide, to end apartheid, to end ethnic cleansing, to end the abuse of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, and now in our own country and in America as well, if they spent half as much time thinking about those things as they do thinking about new ways to repress our protests, we would be in a much better place here in this country. To the New South Wales government, it's not that hard. We're here to demand justice for Palestine, as we have been since October 2023, in fact for decades before that. That looks like stopping supporting this racist genocidal state, stopping allowing the shipments of weapons parts that go between Australia and Israel, stopping diplomatic support for a country which denies Palestinians' rights. Those things are not that difficult, but the government has decided that instead of addressing any of these issues, it is going to attack our right to demand those things. And so we're going to keep fighting on university campuses and out here in the streets.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
All right, I'm going to invite up another speaker from the Greens. So this is Hannah Thomas. She is the candidate, Greens candidate for Grayndler in the upcoming federal election. That is, of course, Anthony Albanese's seat. We should not, even though we're focusing on Chris Minns here because we're focusing on the New South Wales anti-protest laws, of course we do not want to let Anthony Albanese and the federal government off the hook either. In fact, Albanese has already come out and contradicted Minns' story. Minns and the police minister here, Catley, are kind of still pretending like they didn't maybe know that it was all a hoax, you know, all the rest of it. Even though they were getting daily police briefings, you know, even though the police had said pretty much publicly already that that was the case, or somehow maybe they didn't know, whatever, which of course is the most transparent bullshit that you could possibly imagine. But Albanese has already come out and said that he knew, in his words, from very early on that this was actually a criminal hoax, that this was not actually a wave of attacks motivated by anti-Semitism, and of course again that this had no link to the protest movement. Well, why didn't Albanese come out publicly and say that? As laws are being passed on the basis of these lies to take away our rights to protest, our democratic rights to free speech, you know, Albanese just shuts up about it, lets all this happen, and then afterwards says, oh yeah, no, I knew. Well, this is outrageous. And of course, as Yas has just pointed out, you know, it is important to keep the focus on why we're protesting in the first place, which is the ongoing genocide in Gaza. There are Palestinians being killed every day in Gaza despite this so-called ceasefire. By the way, solidarity to the psychiatrists too. Good on you guys. Yeah. All the best in your fight as well. We want to keep the focus on the ongoing crimes taking place in Gaza as well. And as Yas said, you know, this isn't just that our government has lent their totally one-sided political support to the genocidal state of Israel and its far-right extremist leadership in the Netanyahu regime, but also they continue to give material support to that genocide through their ongoing weapons deals and trades and all the rest of it. So yeah, we would love to see Albanese get a massive pro-Palestine kick up the arse in this federal election. So yeah, thank you, Hannah.
I just want to quickly talk about how decisively both the New South Wales and federal governments acted off the back of what was a fake terror plot, what was a con job. They acted with decisive urgency to pass these so-called anti-terror laws, mandatory sentencing laws in the federal parliament. Where is this urgency? Where is this decisiveness when it comes to the housing crisis, when it comes to the cost of living crisis, when it comes to the climate crisis, and when it comes to sanctioning Israel as it commits a live stream genocide? Shame on the New South Wales government, shame on the Albanese government. I want to also commend Kobi Shetty MP, the member for Balmain, Jenny Leong, all the Greens MPs, who are the only people in the New South Wales Parliament genuinely standing up for our right to protest, as well as in the federal parliament, Senator Marine Faruqi in particular, who has called on the government to repeal the mandatory sentencing laws that they rushed through in the federal parliament. I echo Josh's call that any Labor MP, any MP who purports to support civil liberties must put their money where their mouth is, must vote for the Greens action to repeal these laws. I also want to briefly mention that obviously the intent of all this silencing is to try and defeat the pro-Palestine movement. It's to try and defeat the protest movement. What we need to do is turn up in numbers, continue to turn up in numbers at actions like these and at actions like the big PAG rallies in the city. I think there's one coming up in the last weekend of March. So let's all turn up there in massive numbers, show the government that we do not give a shit about their laws. We have the right to protest no matter what they try and rush through. And finally, I'll just say that we do have a federal election coming up. We have the chance to hold Albanese to account, but I also want to briefly mention what Dutton is trying to do. Overnight, he mentioned that he was thinking of holding a referendum to gain the right to deport dual citizens. Now, I was a dual citizen until recently. So many of us are dual citizens in this country, and they want to create basically a second-class tier so that they can have the right to be racist and deport people for any reasons that they want. So shame on Dutton, shame on Albanese. Albanese purported to be a big leftist warrior. He likes to talk about his strong history protesting back in his uni days. Well, now that he is the most powerful person in the country, what has he done? Attack the Palestinian movement, attack the protest movement. Shame on him. This election, make sure you mobilize, do everything you can to send Dutton a message. We deserve better, and that means we deserve better than the major parties. Thank you.
Shame! Shame, Labour, shame! Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
Shame, Labour, shame!
And if anyone can think up a catchy chant about repealing laws, please let me know. I've got nothing at the moment. I'm glad Hannah raised the issue again of Peter Dutton and what the far right are up to around the world, because we've seen Dutton's outrageous attempt to also latch onto this criminal hoax for his own rotten, racist political gain. Of course, his response to basically anything that ever happens in the world is it's some immigrant's fault. We should deport someone, he trips over on the street, deport someone, cost of living, immigrants' fault, you name it, crime, deport someone, or maybe lock up more Aboriginal kids or something. This is what this odious right-wing racist politician stands for and has always stood for. I said as well, in the United States, we've seen the despicable repression that Trump is carrying out in the US, and I think one thing we should chant for a second is to say, "Free Mahmoud Khalil now! Free Mahmoud Khalil now! Free Mahmoud Khalil now!
Free Mahmoud Khalil now!
Free Mahmoud Khalil now!" Mahmoud Khalil, of course, is the Columbia University student who was one of the leaders of the protest camp there. He was one of the lead negotiators of the camp there and key spokesperson for the Columbia camp. He is not accused of committing a single crime, of breaking any US law, and yet he has been kidnapped by plainclothes police in a most terrifying manner, dragged off into hidden cells, not told where he was being taken to his 8-month pregnant wife or his lawyers or anything else. They dragged him across state line after state line. They're using every dirty, legal or illegal trick, really, that the US can muster to persecute this man, and they're planning to deport him. And his crime is purely a political crime, a thought crime, so-called, for supporting Palestine. That's it. They're not even accusing him of breaking a single law, and yet Trump is rounded him up, kidnapped him, and is pledging to deport him. And this is absolutely outrageous. And as we've heard, this is not unique to America. We have a case perhaps not quite as dramatic, but equally odious. It's played out right here at our own Sydney University. And it makes it even more outrageous, given the danger of far-right, authoritarian, racist governments around the world taking power and trying to dismantle what democratic rights we have. Makes it even more outrageous that here we have Labor governments at a state and federal level, Labor governments who get into these places on the backs of the votes of the working class in this country, who then get in there, get their hundreds of thousands in political payments, amass their fucking property portfolios, excuse my language, and then sell out all the people who put them there in the first place. I mean, that's the whole history of the Labor Party, but it's particularly odious when we see that being carried out right now in a context of far-right authoritarian governments in the world. Instead of doing everything they can to defend our basic, liberal freedoms and democratic rights against the threat of the far right, they are paving the way for them. That's what Albanese's doing, paving the way for a Dutton government at every level. He's paving the way. He's passing more authoritarian laws himself, which will be handed over to Dutton if he wins the election, and empowered Peter Dutton to carry out even more of these nasty, horrible, brutal policies. And of course, he's paving the way by supporting a genocide for 16 months, by supporting every bloody right-wing cause in this country, and by screwing over the working class, as Hannah talked about as well. So we need to build the opposition in this country to all of these people. We need to stand firm on our principles, and we need to be defiant if we need to be in the face of these anti-protest laws and this repression that they're trying to mete out to all of us. Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, As I said, we've seen not just a wave of anti-protest laws, but a wave of real McCarthyite kind of witch hunt, style stuff going on in Australia for months and months now. And it's really just absolutely shocking and appalling, really. We've seen, of course, the case of Antoinette Lattouf, again play out in that building just down there in the Supreme Court. A journalist openly sacked for her political views. The ABC doesn't even deny that. They say they agree. Yeah, we sacked her for her political views. They don't really try to hide that. I mean, initially they tried to say there's no such thing as a Lebanese race or bizarre, shocking claims they tried to in the beginning. But in the end, they didn't really deny it at all. They just argued, oh no, but we sacked her for her political views in the correct way that abided by our policies and therefore are totally legal and fine. But this is the ABC, who we know, pretend to be the most, balanced and all that. But it's been, report after report revealing what utter lies that is, that on all of their shows, they've had, twice, 3 times as many pro-Israel voices as they have anti or pro-Palestine voices, all the rest of it. This is the ABC, and it's not just the ABC, of course. We know that's played out across our media organisations. Right early on in this, in Israel's genocide in Gaza, there were hundreds of journalists who signed an open letter criticising their own organisations for their totally biased coverage, where they were contributing to the dehumanisation of the Palestinian people. They were helping justify Israel's war crimes in Gaza every day. And what happened to those hundreds of journalists who signed that open letter? They were taken off any reporting about the Middle East. That's what those institutions, that's how they responded to this call about bias in our media organisations. We see it, of course, through all of our arts and cultural institutions play out as well, with performers being denied, being attacked, and all the rest of it. So this McCarthyite-style witch hunt has also rested heavily, again, on this criminal con job. The same institutions like our New South Wales and federal parliaments that have passed anti-protest laws based on these lies have also been persecuting employees and individuals across a whole different series of institutions based on these lies. So we have to say all of them need to now reverse all of those measures. I mean, it's the most obvious thing in the world. Those measures need to be reversed. Those people who have been persecuted should be apologised to, should be offered their jobs back, should be offered reparations for the damage done to them through these dishonest acts. And they need to be held accountable for what's happened. So this has played out across society, and it's worth, we don't like to usually censor them that much in the debate because they get enough airtime, but it is a time, I think, to call out the rotten role of all of the pro-Israel lobby groups in this country as well. We know, for example, the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, Alex Rivchin, all the rest of these pro-Israel lobby groups, which, by the way, have profited to the tune of tens of millions of dollars thanks to this same criminal hoax. Do people know that? The government has literally just handed over, gifted tens of millions of dollars to these pro-Israel lobby groups in Australia. Now, these are groups, of course, who pretend that they exist as representatives of the Jewish community in this country. In reality, they exist as representatives of the Israeli state in this country. They are the mouthpieces of propaganda for the genocide that has taken place in Gaza. Their entire job is to dehumanize the Palestinian people and to try to slander and repress and silence the pro-Palestine movement in this country. And by the way, they're all aligned pretty much with the far right in Australia. If anyone saw that despicable Sky News so-called anti-Semitism conference, now how can you have an anti-Semitism conference where pretty much every speaker is from the far right? Where do you think anti-Semitism has come from in society? It's come, of course, from the far right. And yet these are exactly the kinds of conferences going on around the place. We saw that actually right now in Israel. Israel is hosting a supposed anti-Semitism conference. Who have they invited? All the far right, neo-fascist and neo-Nazi governments of Europe and parties of Europe. That's who's attending that conference. Even the new right-wing German government has withdrawn from that conference because they don't want to go to a conference alongside the AfD, the neo-Nazis of Germany, the people who openly, well, perhaps not openly, but certainly within their ranks have many open admirers of Adolf Hitler and the despicable Nazi regime and the Holocaust. That's who Israel is inviting to discuss anti-Semitism. And it can seem utterly absurd, and how the hell can you make sense of this, except for the fact that actually there is a commonality there, because Israel also wants to carry out a genocide against the Palestinian people. It's the most racist, openly racist society on earth, where they are right now ethnically cleansing millions of people out of their homes. They carry out apartheid policies, openly racist policies, which oppress the Palestinian people. So this is what's going on, and the pro-Israel lobby here needs to be seen for what it is by our institutions and our media here. Still every day they are quoted as somehow a reliable and respectable source of information about what's happening in society, or about anti-Semitism, or about anything. But it's all been revealed, again, as have all the politicians' talking points, as total cynical, self-serving bullshit, actually, by this recent hoax. At the Sky News Summit, again, the Australian Council for Australian Jewry presented what they called a 15-point plan to combat anti-Semitism in Australian society. Now, you can guess what was on those 15 points. Was any of them about, the need to combat the far right in society and neo-Nazis? No, that didn't appear on the list. What appeared on the list? More anti-protest laws, more purges of our universities of pro-Palestine academics and students, even more laws and powers to take away our rights to protest, and all the rest of it. And that is who Chris Minns, of course, has been playing to. This is a Minns government. This is Chris Minns himself, who pretty much his entire policy framework seems to come from chatting to Ben Fordham on 2GB every morning. He certainly doesn't even consult his Labor Party, so-called platform, so-called passed in a democratic fashion by Labor's conference. No, that's all irrelevant. And same with Albanese, when he passed those recent laws which include mandatory sentencing, which go against, again, Labor's own official policy platform. So this is what's going on. We have an Australian government at state and federal level, which has backed, of course, a far-right genocidal regime carrying out an ethnic cleansing program in Palestine in the context of a Trump government now ruling in the White House and egging Israel on to go even further. That is what's going on. And of course, we're seeing the result of that erode our democratic rights in this country. How can you support a fascist regime in Israel carrying out a genocide and not have it erode the democratic rights that we have in this country? And that is exactly the logic that is playing out now. And it's what we said from day one, that Israel is not just taking the lives of Palestinians to hell in Gaza and the West Bank, they are taking the world to hell, because they are ripping up every even vestige of basic human rights that we have tried to defend and fight for so many decades. And our Labor governments here, shamefully, are leading that charge in Australia. They're the ones in government carrying this out. So shame, Labor, shame!
Shame, Labor, shame!
Shame, Minns, shame!
Shame, Minns, shame!
Chris Minns, you can't hide!
Chris Minns, you can't hide!
You're supporting genocide!
You're supporting genocide!
Chris Minns, you can't hide!
Chris Minns, you can't hide!
You're supporting genocide!
You're supporting genocide!
Albanese, you can't hide!
Albanese, you can't hide!
You're supporting genocide! Stop arming genocide! Stop arming genocide! Stop arming Israel! Stop arming Israel! Protesting is not a crime! Free Palestine! 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 Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! All right, everyone, unless I can convince Wendy Bacon to come up and speak at no notice, I can't. Now I've put you on the spot. While she thinks about it,
why don't you read this? It's a letter from Albert Einstein to the fighters for Israel in 1948.
a letter from Albert Einstein. Yeah, well, we know Albert Einstein was a good man and an opponent of Israel, actually. All right, I'll just while Wendy's gathering her thoughts, thank you, Wendy. I've totally put her on the spot. Sorry, this is all organised pretty last minute. As Hannah already referred to it, but our next major pro-Palestine rally is Saturday, the 29th of March. So please all mobilise our networks and let's hit the streets in a massive way then to stand against the genocide in Gaza, to expose what's going on. Of course, Israel is threatening any moment now to re-unleash hell upon the Gaza Strip. In fact, right now they're blocking aid and reconstruction in Gaza. They've just switched tactics. They haven't ended the genocide. Their strategy, their plan, what they're actually doing remains a process of genocide and ethnic cleansing in Gaza. It's just now they want to carry it out, or right now, through starvation. Through starvation, denial of healthcare, denial of shelter, disease, all the rest of it. That's what Israel is doing right now to the people of Gaza, and at any minute, they could restart the vicious bombing campaign as well. And of course, the West Bank. We know Israel has stepped up all of its assaults on the West Bank, on Palestinians there, illegal home demolitions, illegal settlement building, a tightening of the noose on all of the Palestinians in the West Bank through their use of military checkpoints everywhere. People can't even travel from one village to the next without having to go through myriad checkpoints. And right now they are increasingly being locked down, or Palestinians are being forced to wait even longer, hours, before they can even reach a village next door where they might need to go to work, to see family, for healthcare, any other reason. This is the noose that Israel is tightening on the West Bank as part of their ongoing, again, ethnic cleansing operation there as well. So we need to protest on Saturday the 29th. The 30th of March is Palestine Land Day, so this is an important weekend to commemorate that as well. The reason we're protesting on the 29th is because we don't want to clash with Eid, which may fall on the 30th or 31st of March. So please, be out there Saturday the 29th, and thank you so much. Wendy Bacon is an independent journalist and been doing heaps of really good work lately. I encourage everyone to read the stuff she's been putting out about a lot of the dirty shenanigans playing out in politics in Australia. So thank you, Wendy.
Thanks, Josh. About the media and the work that we've been doing recently to investigate, one part of the Zionist lobby. And as a journalist, I know, and you know, that the Zionist lobby has had a grip on the Australian media for a long time. It has got worse because we've seen the rise of Sky News, which was a tiny fringe thing, which, thanks to governments giving them access to a big free audience, have become quite a powerful, I would say, propaganda weapon. People have already mentioned the Anti-Semitism Summit. I don't encourage you to watch it because it really is very depressing and hysterical. But we saw Sherry Markson, who is one of the main propaganda people at Sky News, provide a gushing thanks and platforming of Peter Dutton with his racist agenda that he would like to put into practice. But we also saw Chris Minns really nail his flag to the mast and absolutely embrace a Zionist position. Now, as Josh has also said, that is really no surprise. He first was taken to Israel, I think it might be 40, I'm not quite sure exactly how many years, but he was taken to Israel along with other Labor Party figures and has long been very close to the Zionist lobby. So that's really not a surprise. I think what is a little bit more of a surprise, some of you, of course, have noticed, I think everybody here will know about the guy Ophir Birnbaum, who went to the Cairo takeaway with a News Corp crew to do some undercover filming with the absolute intent to create an incident that could then be branded as anti-Semitic. That went wrong. But did you know that this same guy, Ophir Birnbaum, was also at Invasion Day with the same journalist, filming Greens and other Invasion Day activists undercover with his earphones, with his video glasses, with the News Corp journalist for quite a long time. He also went, I would say, to Newcastle, where he attended a peaceful pro-Palestinian protest and filmed undercover there. And of course, all of those images of people can be fed into systems which will allow them to be identified and kept and stored potentially for some horrible purpose in the future, such as attacking academics, attacking activists, and all that sort of thing. Now, you know, when we looked a little bit further, there's two people, Ophir Birnbaum and Sophie Calland. That is his wife, partner, whatever you want to call it. Now, Sophie is a member of the Alexandria branch of the ALP. Ophir Birnbaum, now just a little bit more about Ophir Birnbaum. Ophir Birnbaum is an acknowledged friend, and that is like a title, not just a follower, a friend of the Australian Jewish Association. Australian Jewish Association is a far-right organisation, explicitly so, and is a partner, the head of it, David Adler, was a founding organiser of Advance. So let there be no misunderstanding. Ophir joined the Rosebery branch, that is Tanya Plebisik's branch of the ALP last year. Subsequently, he was out there in the community at Green Square filming Luc Velez, the Greens candidate for Sydney, undercover. That was then posted on Facebook. Lots of nasty commentary, including very transphobic commentary. Now, that has now been exposed. As it was exposed, it was disappeared. Ophir used the name Ophir Israel. Nothing of, we sent some questions to Israel about a related matter where a very heavy threat was issued against a man who lives in the Waterloo apartments, and about 20 minutes after that, every trace of Ophir, all the content had been removed. Luckily, we had quite a few screenshots, so we were able to continue with our story, but in the future, I think it would always be wise to capture all the content, because it can just disappear. Now, after we published the article, and it exposes the right-wing links of these people, Sophie also is operating third-party organisations. They go out, some astroturfing type organisations, put out lies during election campaigns. She did it during the local government, inner west and eastern suburbs local government elections, try to pretend the Greens, who will be out there on Sunday at the native logging forest, are just as environmental as they ever were. Their main sort of idea is that the Greens used to care about local issues, environmental issues, but they don't anymore, and now they just care about supporting Palestine. That is, they support terrorism. So there's so many lies in that little package, but unfortunately there is no truth in political advertising. Now, she has now set up an organisation called Better Australia 2025. The name was registered last year. It is just coming online now. It's been registered, and they will be campaigning against the Greens and minor parties. So these are the people that the Labor Party has in their ranks. And I'll just say one last thing, because we're in the process of sort of trying to bring all this together now. But you know, what you do as a journalist, you ask questions. I mean, you might wonder sometimes whether that is what journalists do, but that is the whole idea. You try to get to the bottom of things. So after we published the article, as would be expected, I put in questions to Tanya Plebiscite. I put in questions to Ron Herning, who is in this place, a member for Hebron, Friends of Israel. Put in questions to him. He's also in the Alexandria branch. and to New South Wales Labor head office. I could not even, and no doubt if I tried harder I could have, find out the names of the media officers, let alone being able to speak to them. That is a first for me, actually. At the end of the day, I just had to accept that they weren't going to communicate with me, and they would simply say, they did send me a message, decline to comment. So, you know, we're working on this now. If any of you see anything of Ophir or Sophie Callan, please let us know. But, you know, this is just one little thing that is happening. It is serious, it is political manipulation. It is not more serious than the whole idea of knowingly allowing very sort of messages that make people, things like graffiti on synagogues or fire, that do spread fear in the community. But those incidents were done with intent to spread fear. Albanese and Minns knew that. They knew that there were not waves of Semitism in the community. They knew that this was, in a sense, fake. It's of course not fake necessarily at the receiving end. So that, you know, they've used this sham to pass through laws that at the very, you know, when I first knew Labor lawyers, which is decades ago, they'd be outside Parliament House speaking now. But we have gone so far from that. We're in a completely different situation where these politicians, Albanese and Minns and Tony Burke, use this sham spreading of fear to pass laws that go to the very heart of what they were once meant to be on about. They strike at the heart of that and democracy. So we have to stand up against this. Hopefully there will be some sense and they will repeal the laws. If not, we may have to simply defy the laws, which can be changed. You know, at the end of the day, you can defy laws peacefully. So, you know, it's hard to keep protesting against all this stuff all the time, but we just have to do it. And thanks to those who are here today.
Thank you, Wendy. One more chant. Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime.
Protesting is not a crime.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Protesting is not a crime. April, so keep an eye out for that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Chrisman doesn't know explosives need a boosted
All right, well that's it. No incidents as always. They're just winding up now. Yeah, I'll leave it at that and head home.